how South Africa's biggest drug kingpin met his dead end. On a quiet Friday evening, July 1st, 2023, the emergency room of a Johannesburg hospital turned into a scene of hushed whispers and urgent phone calls. Glenn Agliotti, once one of South Africa's most feared and powerful drug lords, was declared dead shortly after 7 p.m. The police were called to the hospital, and within minutes, a team arrived to begin what would soon become a national headline. Lieutenant Colonel Mavila Masando confirmed the news to reporters that same night. Glenn Agliotti had passed away. An inquest docket, an official investigation into an unexplained death, was opened at the Douglasdale police station. As the news broke, questions swirled about whether this was a natural death or the final twist in a life filled with crime, betrayal, and corruption. The hospital staff remained tight-lipped, only stating that Agliotti had been brought in unconscious. Rumors spread quickly, some suggesting foul play, others pointing to years of stress catching up to him. By morning, the South African Police Service had announced that a full post-mortem would be conducted. The nation wanted answers. How could such a powerful figure, once able to corrupt top cops and navigate the underworld with ease, simply die so quietly? For years, Glenn Agliotti had been at the center of scandal after scandal. His name was once synonymous with money, power, and manipulation. Now, it was being whispered in the sterile corridors of a hospital, where his life ended alone and in silence. Agliotti's death came almost exactly 2 decades after he first rose to public infamy. Many saw it as the final act of a long, dangerous play, a man who lived in the shadows, finally consumed by them. His connections reached into the highest levels of law enforcement and business, and his influence shaped South Africa's criminal and political landscape. But in the end, no bodyguards stood at his hospital door. No powerful friends came to his bedside. His end was quiet. The real question was, what secrets died with him? To understand Glenn Agliotti's rise, you have to understand his greatest protector, Jackie Selebi. In the early 2000s, Selebi was more than just the National Police Commissioner. He was a symbol of a new South Africa. Charismatic and respected, he seemed untouchable. But behind the scenes, Selebi was living a double life. As evidence later showed, he was secretly accepting bribes from Agliotti, money, expensive clothes, and other gifts that totaled more than 1.2 million rands. In return, Selebi provided Agliotti with confidential police information, shielding him from investigations and tipping him off about possible raids. It was a friendship built not on trust, but on greed. The Mail and Guardian reported that Selebi even gave Agliotti access to secret police reports, effectively helping him stay one step ahead of the law. For years, Agliotti operated with impunity, thanks to the man who was supposed to bring criminals to justice. But corruption has a way of exposing itself. In 2010, Selebi was convicted of corruption, making him the first National Police Commissioner in South Africa to be sent to prison for accepting bribes from a drug lord. The trial gripped the nation. It wasn't just about crime, it was about betrayal at the highest level. Agliotti played a crucial role in the conviction. When he turned state witness, he opened the floodgates. His testimony painted a picture of a police chief on the payroll of organized crime. Selebi was sentenced to 15 years in prison, though he served less than 1 before being granted medical parole. He died in 2015 from diabetes and kidney failure. For many, Selebi's fall from grace was poetic justice. But for Agliotti, it was simply business. He had taken down the man who once protected him, and in doing so, bought himself more time outside a prison cell. It was one of his boldest moves, and perhaps one of his last protections. While Selebi's trial made headlines, there was another shadow looming over Glenn Agliotti, one drenched in blood and mystery. In 2005, South Africa was rocked by the shocking murder of mining billionaire Brett Kebell. At first, it looked like a carjacking gone wrong. But as investigators dug deeper, Agliotti's name surfaced once again. He wasn't just a drug dealer. He was deeply involved in the complex web of high-stakes business and political intrigue. It turned out that Kebell's death wasn't a random act of violence. It was planned, and Agliotti, though never convicted, was linked to the case in disturbing ways. During court proceedings, testimony revealed that Agliotti owed $15 million to Kebell's business partner, John Stratton. According to Andrew Minnar, Kebell's former housekeeper, the two businessmen were growing increasingly frustrated. They believed they were paying Agliotti that money specifically to gain favor with Commissioner Selebi. There was mention of money, Minnar said under oath. And not just any money, but hush money, influence money. Documents found in Kebell's home contained key details about these payments. But after Kebell's murder, those documents mysteriously disappeared, allegedly taken to Cape Town by Stratton. The case against Agliotti never reached a final verdict in the Kebell murder. But public opinion was clear. Many believed he was involved directly or indirectly. The murder showed just how deep Agliotti's influence ran, touching not just police officials, but billionaires and boardrooms. His world was one where power, wealth, and death were all part of the same game. And though he avoided jail for Kebell's killing, the stain never left him. It added to his legend, and to the list of enemies who might have wanted him gone. By the time he died, Agliotti had more ghosts in his past than friends in the present. And each ghost had a price that someone somewhere still wanted paid. Glenn Agliotti didn't become South Africa's biggest drug kingpin overnight. His rise was marked by ruthless ambition, clever manipulation, and a network of loyal allies who helped him control the flow of drugs across the country. In the 1990s and early 2000s, Agliotti built his empire by supplying heroin and other illegal substances to major cities, making millions in the process. But what set him apart was his ability to operate under the radar, protected by corrupt officials like Jackie Celebi. With inside information and police protection, he avoided raids and arrests for years. This helped him expand his reach, gaining a reputation as untouchable in the criminal underworld. However, every empire has its cracks. Rival gangs grew jealous and fearful of his power, and law enforcement started piecing together the puzzle. When Celebi's corruption was uncovered, it sent shockwaves through Agliotti's operation. The Kingpin's carefully built shield was cracked. Investigations intensified, and Agliotti was forced to make difficult choices. His allies began turning on him, hoping to save themselves. The media caught wind of the story, shining a harsh spotlight on the dark connections between crime and law enforcement. The more the public learned, the more Agliotti's myth of invincibility faded. Yet, even as his world crumbled, Agliotti showed a cold, calculating side. He cooperated with prosecutors to secure deals, revealing secrets that many wanted buried. But this cooperation came at a cost. His reputation among criminals was destroyed, and he became a marked man. Many wondered if his death was natural or if it was the result of enemies exacting revenge. His empire was finished, but the scars of his reign remain in South Africa's battle against drugs and corruption. Agliotti's story is a grim reminder that crime may flourish for a time, but justice, in some form, always catches up. The murder of Brett Kebell remains one of South Africa's most controversial and puzzling crimes. Kebell was not just a billionaire, but a man deeply involved in politics and business. His death sent ripples through the country's elite circles, raising uncomfortable questions about greed, betrayal, and violence. Agliotti's name was connected to this crime through his financial dealings and shadowy influence. Court testimonies revealed how money exchanged hands, with payments meant to curry favor with high-ranking officials like Jackie Celebi. But the missing documents from Kebell's home suggested someone was trying to hide the truth. Despite these suspicions, no one was ever convicted for Kebell's murder. Agliotti's possible involvement remained a topic for speculation and rumor. Some believed his power extended far enough to silence witnesses and manipulate investigations. Others saw his links as indirect, someone who benefited from Kebell's death but did not pull the trigger. The mystery deepened when Agliotti himself was questioned but released without charges. To many, this was another example of how his criminal influence infiltrated even the highest levels of justice. For the families affected and the public, the lack of closure was painful. Kebell's murder reminded South Africans that money and power can sometimes shield killers from punishment. But it also fueled the resolve of police and journalists determined to uncover the truth. The case remains open in many minds, a dark chapter in the story of crime and corruption in the country. Agliotti's death closed one door, but left many questions hanging. Who truly killed Brett Kebell? And what other secrets died with Glenn Agliotti? Glenn Agliotti's death marked the end of an era, but it also sparked reflection across South Africa about the cost of corruption and crime. For years, Agliotti's story had been a symbol of how deep criminal networks could penetrate the police force and government. His connection to Jackie Celebi exposed a dark partnership where loyalty was bought with money and secrets. When Celebi fell, it was seen as a victory for justice, but the damage had already been done. Many officials were implicated, and public trust in law enforcement was shaken. The police service vowed reforms, but the shadow of Agliotti's reign lingered. His death also raised questions about accountability. While he had been convicted and sentenced for drug trafficking, many felt he escaped full justice. His role in corruption and alleged involvement in murder cases never fully came to light in court. Some South Africans wondered if true justice was possible when figures like Agliotti wielded so much influence. Yet, his fall served as a warning to others who believed they were untouchable. The story showed that no matter how powerful or connected, criminals can be caught and brought down. It was a reminder that justice, though sometimes slow, can prevail. As the country moves forward, Agliotti's legacy remains a complex one, part criminal mastermind, part informant, part victim of his own world. His death did not erase the harm caused, but it closed a violent chapter in South Africa's fight against drugs and corruption. Police continue to pursue those who operated in his shadow, hoping to build a safer future. The Kingpin story is now part of history, a chilling tale of how crime and power collide, and how even the biggest kingpins can meet their dead end. Glenn Agliotti's story is not just about drugs and violence. It is also about betrayal within the police force. His close relationship with Jackie Celebi was just the tip of the iceberg. Many officers were suspected of being on his payroll, turning a blind eye to his illegal operations. This created a system where justice was selective and the law was weakened. For years, honest officers struggled to do their jobs, knowing that their colleagues were protecting criminals. The corruption ran so deep that some believed Agliotti was almost untouchable. This betrayal caused serious damage to public trust. Communities affected by drugs felt abandoned by those meant to protect them. Agliotti's ability to buy protection allowed him to expand his empire, hurting thousands. Whistleblowers faced threats and intimidation, and many cases were quietly dropped. But cracks appeared when investigations into Celebi began. Slowly, the truth started to surface, and more officers were named in corruption scandals. The police service faced a difficult reckoning, forced to clean house and restore credibility. Despite the efforts, some believed that corruption still existed, just under different leaders. Agliotti's death brought renewed calls for transparency and reform. The public demanded accountability and promised to watch closely. His empire was broken, but the lessons of his reign remain. Trust, once lost, is hard to regain. South Africa's fight against corruption in law enforcement continues, fueled by the painful legacy of betrayal and greed that Agliotti left behind. Behind the headlines and courtrooms, the real victims of Glenn Agliotti's empire were the countless families shattered by drugs and violence. His control of drug trafficking brought addiction, crime, and fear to communities across South Africa. Children grew up in dangerous neighborhoods where drug dealers ruled the streets. Mothers lost sons to overdoses or gang violence. Agliotti's wealth came at a terrible cost, paid by ordinary people who never saw any benefit from his millions. Many victims felt forgotten by the justice system, which seemed focused on catching big criminals but slow to help those harmed. Social programs and addiction support were limited, leaving communities vulnerable. For some, Agliotti's death brought a sense of closure. But for many others, it was just another chapter in a long story of loss. The impact of his actions stretched far beyond his own life. Crime rates in some areas remain high, fueled by drug demand and poverty.